A lot of smiles on stage on Friday night, James. You look like you were having a good time.
I was.
Yeah.
Every time we play together, Albert, he's so great, man. We have a great time
Yeah.
playing together.
So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then, of course, there was the thing in the barn yesterday afternoon. That was a great workshop, yeah.
All right.
Albert, one of the things that you mentioned on stage at the barn was you referred to skiffle music and how important that was to your development and interest in music. And I wonder if you could maybe tell us a bit about that time when you were being turned on to skiffle music and the reaction that you had to that.
Oh yeah, we at that time, our radio was Doris Day and Guy Mitchell, So when Lonnie Donegan came on the scene, he was playing folk music, but with a jazz rhythm section, and just strumming away 3 chords on a guitar. But it was really exciting music, So it was a complete change from what we'd grown up with. So that really got all the kids of my age wanting to play the guitar. And I think I borrowed about 2 or 3 guitars over the course of 18 months. I didn't actually own one. I kept borrowing them, and then my folks realized that I was actually getting somewhere with this, so I actually got my own guitar after a while.
And not a lot of legitimate instruments needed to be part of the skiffle sound, of course, guitar being one of them, and washboards, kazoos. It was kind of a jug band thing, and the music itself was based in lead belly and jug band tradition, right?
Yeah, and Woody Guthrie. Yeah.
Woody Guthrie.
Yeah.
So it was a great introduction to that.
Well, it
music.
was, but shortly after that, we heard Elvis, and then all the great rockers all came at once. With Gene Vincent and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis, the Everly Brothers, and of course Ricky Nelson. So that completely changed my interest in the guitar at that point.
Mm-hmm. James, you famously purchased a Telecaster at the age of 14 from J&S Music in Shreveport, Louisiana.
How'd you know that? Yeah, actually, I was downtown and happened to walk by the music store, and they had this guitar hanging in the window. I just stood there, and it was amazing. I didn't want to leave. But I went home and told my mother, and she told my dad when he came home, and Dad said, well, if that's a guitar he wants, go get it for him. And that was my first Tele.
Yeah.
52 Tele.
The Shreveport, Louisiana area, I think has been kind of under-investigated in a sense and underappreciated in terms of music history and rock history. And I'm just curious, growing up in Shreveport, what music was affecting you at the time?
Well, I started out on country music and actually got into rhythm and blues. But at the age of 14, I was playing on Louisiana Hayride. And there was a fun show. I played behind all the artists, George Jones, Johnny Horton, all the great entertainers that came and performed. And unfortunately, Louisiana didn't keep the history and the music at that time, and it all went to Nashville.
Now, Louisiana Hayride was a radio show. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about that. Was it on weekends, and how long did it last?
Yeah, the show was every Saturday night, Louisiana Hayride, and it was actually KWKH, a radio station, and every Saturday night. And actually, when I recorded Suzy Q, was in KWKH studio, and it was downtown in just a building downtown. And that was, we only had like 2 or 3 mics, and it was an incredible recording for the, facilities we had.
It sure was. But KMK seemed to be a big part of the music scene in Shreveport. Were there also a lot of clubs going on and a lot of live music? Was it a real scene in Shreveport?
Well, there was a town, right across the bridge from Shreveport, a little town called Bossier City. and it was like the Vegas Strip. There's one club after another. I played every club, and working with Dale Hawkins with the blues band, and that's when we actually did Suzy Q. And I was 15 years old when I played the guitar on that record.
So is it true that was, you started that as an instrumental with those licks?
That was true. Yeah, it was a little instrumental, and it was so popular in the clubs. Dale said, well, I need to write some lyrics. And he did. He wrote some lyrics, and we recorded it.
Another thing about Suzy Q, apart from your incredibly distinctive landmark guitar work on there, and the whole performance, was it was a very early electric bass recording, wasn't it?
It was a stand-up bass.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was an electric bass, so no. Okay, sorry about that.
Well, we did like two versions. One was a faster version and a slower version. One was I think the original record that was released was stand-up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Albert, I had a chance to interview you a couple of years ago, and you mentioned something I didn't realize at the time, and I thought about it afterwards. I thought, oh, okay, here's my opportunity to ask you about Liverpool and that connection to Hamburg. And you were one of the many musicians who went to Hamburg and played in that Reeperbahn scene there.
I did, yeah. I went in '62, but I think the British bands started to play there in about 1960, 59, 60. You know, there were clubs along the Reeperbahn, cabaret clubs, nightclubs, and because it's a port there, so there have always been a lot of sailors in that city, But after the war, things eased up, and all these young kids wanted things to do, and they heard this American rock and roll music, and the way that they could get to hear this music was to get British bands over there, So we'd go over there and play clubs, and it was quite a scene. I was there around the same time that the Beatles were there, and quite a few Liverpool bands, but there were bands from all over the UK that went there, And we get to meet each other, You play an hour, then go and wander the streets, go to a bar or whatever, and then come back again, play another hour. So you might start at 7 o'clock and finish at 2 o'clock or whatever, Mm-hmm.
So who are some of the other bands apart from the Beatles that were there too?
King Size Taylor and the Dominoes. I don't suppose anybody remembers them, but they were big at the time, I met a band called the Jaybirds, who was actually Alvin Lee, and they became 10 years after, a little while after that. I got to know Alvin quite well at that time. And a lot of players going through it. The king of Hamburg at that time was a guy named Tony Sheridan, and everybody thought he was great, and he was really good. He'd get up there and he'd be like Elvis, and he could really sing well, and he'd play a real straight ahead rock and roll guitar. He wasn't flashy, but he had his act together, and everybody looked up to him. So he was resident there at the Star Club. And, the Beatles were his backing band for quite a while there.
It must have been quite a wild scene in Hamburg.
Well, it was. You were right in the middle of the red light district, and we were like 17 years old. It was pretty exciting, because it's all legalized there, It was quite eye-opening for young lads.
Was that with Chris Farlow or another band?
No, this is a band called the Nighttimers. It was just a hastily put together band that I played with. I wasn't with them for very long. But then I did go back to Germany, and I got a call from an agent, and he said, "Oh, this band in Germany, they want a guitar player and the drummer immediately." And they even flew us over there the first time I got on a plane. So we flew to Düsseldorf and got off the plane, and these German guys greeted us, and it was a German band, which is not what we expected at all. But that was quite eye-opening. I mean, they could play and they could sing, and we had some wild times with those guys.
I wanted to ask you, James, of working with Dale Hawkins. I mean, that was, and of course, Susie Q opened so many doors for you. How long did you work with Dale Hawkins, and what kind of work was it? What kind of touring was it?
Well, we didn't do a lot of touring. We actually played the clubs around Shreveport and Bossier. I was pretty young. I didn't want to, jump into touring right away, but it was great. Playing a lot of shows, and we went to Chicago to had a session with Dale at studios there, and there's actually
Was it Chess Studio?
Chess, yeah, it was at Chess Studios, and it was great. After that, I got real busy working with a lot of different country artists, and that was basically when I left Dale back in the 50s.
I had the pleasure of doing an interview with Dale Hawkins and meeting him a few years before his death, and he told me about those sessions in Chicago, and just curious about your impression of going to Chicago and recording at a blues label with a lot of blues legends around, and I believe you ended up going out to some of the clubs in Chicago, some of the blues clubs too.
Well, actually, we played a big show. And Laverne Baker, Mickey and Sylvia, Chuck Berry, and the usual group, And it was great. I mean, a great show, but I didn't go out and play clubs. I was only there for like 3 or 4 days. Yeah. And then I went back home, back to Louisiana.
Did you meet some of the recording artists from Chess at the studio? Were they around?
No, actually, they were all passed out. Muddy Waters, Little Walter, and it was amazing. I didn't know who they were. Dale brought up, he said, there's Muddy Waters. And they had a bottle of wine sitting by them, and they just laid on the floor, passed out. But yeah, it was kind of weird.
Now, Bob Luman was the next artist of note, I think, that you went to work with. And My Girl is Red Hot, you're on that record, right?
I'm on that record, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about Bob Luman.
Well, Bob was a great guy, great showman. We actually rehearsed at Lou Chudd's office, Imperial Records, and that's when I met Ricky. And we were rehearsing that song, Red Hot, and Ricky came in on business, and he said, hey, who's playing in the room next door? And Jimmy Haskell and Lou Chudd said, oh, that's Bob Luman and his boys, the Shadows. So he came in and met him. We met him, and he stayed for about 3 hours. And the next day, he sent a telegram to a home we were staying in out in the valley, Canoga Park, and invited us over to the studio to meet the family and everybody. And we did. And Ozzie got all excited. He said, "Oh, let's do a couple of songs in the show." Yeah. Well, sure, okay. Yeah. But that was the beginning.
James is talking about, of course, Ricky Nelson, Ozzie and Harriet, the TV show that they had, which James was featured on as still a teenager. And you were actually living with the family, I understand, for a couple of years.
Well, I was 16 years old when I went out to join Ricky. And we had dinner that night over at his parents' house. And Ozzie got up to excuse himself to go to work on the script. And he said, by the way, James, we know what it's like at your age, being away from home. So Harriet and I and Ricky and Dave would like to invite you in our home. Stay here, and you and Ricky can work on your music and have a, just get together, have a good music relationship. And we were both 16, just a few months apart.
And at the end of the Ozzie and Harriet show, you would play a song with Ricky Nelson, right?
That got to be a big thing, yeah. Ozzie would put a couple songs in at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
You recorded some great material, of course, with Ricky Nelson, and great studio bands, too. Earl Palmer on drums, for example, on some of that stuff, right?
Yeah, the first record I played on was Waiting at School, It Stood Up. and Joe Maphis played the lead guitar. I played the rhythm guitar part, and that was actually before I went to work for Ricky, and it was great. I played on Town Hall Party when I was like 15, and with Joe Maphis, Rosalie, Johnny Bond, Merle Travis, and as a matter of fact, I played an instrumental one night. Merle got sick, couldn't show up for work, and Johnny Bond introduced me to come out and play a Merle Travis instrumental. And Albert and I were talking about that the other day, but that was on Town Hall Party, and that was a great show. Larry and Lori Collins, and a lot of great talent.
Yeah. Albert, what was your entree into recording and your first sessions in England?
Let's see. I was by '62. I was playing with a band called The Jury, and we were ended up being resident band at this coffee bar in Old Compton Street, and it was a place where all the musicians used to gather. So it was a great place to be. We played there 4 or 5 nights a week for a pound a night each. You know, that was more money that I could earn at a day job at that time, under 18. And we had a singer there for a while called Jackie Linton. He was a really good rock and roll singer, and he had a record deal, and so we went into the old Olympic Studios in London, and did a track. That was my first studio session. My second studio session was at Abbey Road in the Studio 2 before the Beatles ever got in there. You know. So,
Who was that for?
That was for a guy named Dean Shannon, not Del Shannon, Dean Shannon, and it was a pretty good record actually. You know? Yeah. Played guitar on one side and piano on the other.
And Chris Farlow, who we mentioned earlier, that he would have been the first kind of notable person that you were playing with.
Yeah, I was back and forth to Germany for a couple of years, and then I got back in early '64, and I knew about Chris, and a friend of mine was playing bass with him, and his guitar player wanted to leave the music business and become an actor. so I said, "Do you want to play with the band?" I said, "Oh, great," you know. So. I spent the next 4 years with Chris, and we had a really good band, I thought, you know, and we were part of that R&B circuit in London. There was a club called the Flamingo Club where all the bands used to play, and they Friday and Saturday nights they'd have an all-nighter, which would run till like 4:30 in the morning, you know, so you could start at 8 o'clock and finish at 4:30, you know, or you'd be playing out of town, then drive back into London and play the late night set, you know. But that was a great place to be because Eric Clapton was playing with John Mayall, John McLaughlin was playing with Ronnie Jones and the Night Timers, Andy Summers was playing with Zoot Money's Big Roll Band. So there are a lot of great musicians down there, you know, and it was a good place to be at that time. You know, the great thing about the West End of London, it was a small area where the musicians used to focus on. You know, so it was you'd run into anybody, you know, on the street there at any time. It was really cool. Yeah.
James, I wanted to talk to you about the transition that you made from Ricky Nelson to Elvis's band, but maybe before we get to that, talk about some of the sessions and your work as a guitar player in LA doing sessions. I'm just the list of people that James has played with on sessions is absolutely incredible. And I'll just mention a few of them. Apart from Rick Nelson, there's Frank Sinatra, both Elvises. Johnny Cash, Dean Martin, George Jones, Merle Haggard. The list just is almost endless. And these are sessions and performances that Mr. Burton was taking part in. One of the questions I had for you on that regard was that was there somebody that had that absolute star quality that, you know, when they walked into a recording session, every musician respected it and just was totally, you know, focused on that? We're out of those players and some of the other singers that you worked with, did they all have that quality, or what do you think about that?
Well, you mean with Elvis, or who? Different
Just yeah. I mean, I talked to some of the people at Stax said that they worked with a lot of people, but when Otis Redding showed up at a session, everybody was totally focused on Otis Redding, and they knew that there was something was going to happen that was going to be really important just because he was there.
Well, we actually focused on all the artists.
Yeah.
It didn't matter who, 'cause they required your attention, and that was just a natural thing to do, because when you play on a record, you play for the artist, you play for the record and for the style of music, and of course you play your style. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if the people know that I'm having trouble talking because I had a couple of implants 2 weeks ago, and it's very uncomfortable. But I have a mouthful of cotton. Anyway, but working with so many artists, I mean, they're all great. And Elvis, in his own right, the king of rock and roll, an icon, legend. And when I left Ricky, I had a call from Johnny Cash to play on a TV show. Well, I went and played the show, and not knowing what it was. Anyway, it was called Shindig, and that was a very big show for that year. And Jack Good was excited. I was there, and he loved all the instrumentals. I played on solos on Ricky's records, and he said, I want you to be on the show every week. And I said, well, great. What do we do? He said, put a band together, and that's when we put a band together and called it the Shin Dogs. And Delaney Bramlett was the bass player and singer. Joey Cooper, rhythm guitar, singer. Chuck Blackwell, the drummer. Glenn Harden, and I play guitar.
It's kind of the start of the Taking Care of Business band.
Taking Care of Business.
Yeah.
But after that, that went for a year. And doing a TV show and playing on records and everything. I had a call to do a comeback special with Elvis. And unfortunately, I was doing an album with Frank Sinatra, and Jimmy Boyd, the producer, said, no, I can't let you out. So we were working all week. And anyway, Elvis called me back in '69 and asked me to put a band together. And that's when we opened Las Vegas at the International Hotel, which the Hilton became the Hilton later. And now I understand that somebody else bought the Hilton out.
Mm-hmm. And what a legendary band that was, of course.
The TCB band, I put that band together, and all great musicians. They're just a hot band.
Yeah, and the versatility of the players is something I'm sure that appealed to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just working with so many entertainers, I mean, there's no way you could mention them all, but it was a lot of fun going in the studio, and Albert knows what it's like. It's fun to create. It's what we would do, go and create. And I played Graham Parsons. When I met Graham, I was doing records with the Byrds, played on their records, and then pretty soon Graham wanted to be an artist. And Merle Haggard called me and said, hey, do you know this guy, Graham Parsons? I said, sure, I know Graham. And Merle said, well, would you produce an album with me on it, co-produce? And unfortunately, Merle didn't get involved. But a couple of weeks later, I get a call from Graham, and he jumped through the phone. He said, hey, man, I got a record deal. And Ed Tickner, his manager, made a deal. We'd get all the studio players, cut the albums, and go on tour, promote the album. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Graham passed away. But Emmylou was on those records, some of them. Yeah. And that's when all the records with Emmy started, you know. And we cut the same band, played on Emmylou's records, and we toured with her. Went to England and all over, and she became a big star, and a great lady, great talent.
And the hot band, Emmylou Harris's band.
And a hot band. Well, I was the original guitar player, and I get a call from Elvis to go back on tour. He had a tour coming up, and I had to make a choice. I said, well, being the leader of Elvis's band, I better better go do the Elvis thing. So Albert came and took my place with Emmy Lou. And,
That's right, yeah.
and I was very thrilled. What a great guy, great player, incredible.
And carried on this incredible tradition of the hot band being, one of the great recording bands of all time, I think. And anybody who bought those early Emmylou Harris records will attest to that. But Albert, how did you make that transition from coming from England to Los Angeles and eventually becoming a member of the hot band?
Well, I was with Chris Farlow until '68, and then I desperately wanted to play country music, so I put a band together in England, and it wasn't a bad band, but I soon realized that I wasn't going to make a living playing country music in England.
Heads, Hands, and Feet?
No, this is a band called Country Fever.
Oh. Okay.
And we played pubs and country clubs, and their view of country music was Jim Reeves and Johnny Cash. And by that time, of course, I was really into the Byrds and the Burrito Brothers. I thought country music should have a bit more of a rock edge, with like the way James plays, So I realized that wasn't going to last, So I did a couple of things in the meantime. I was with a great folk singer named Sandy Denny for a little while, and then got involved with this band, which became Head, Hands, and Feet. And that was got us a major record deal. We did a big showcase in London, and we had Artie Mogul and Ahmed Ertegun sort of bidding for us at that time. And we ended up going with Capitol Records, and we did our first album. How pretentious is this? Our first album was a double album, and off we went for our first tour of the States. So we ended up in Los Angeles. I thought, at last I'm here. Here I am in the U.S. All through the 60s, I wanted to get to L.A. I'm not sure why it was Los Angeles and not Nashville, but I wanted to be in L.A. I guess I knew James was there, and my heroes, the Everly Brothers, were there, and lots of great. Glenn Campbell, I was a big fan of Glenn Campbell because I knew of him as a session player before he sang, of course, but that's where I wanted to be. So, I was in L.A., and then I ended up with the Crickets. My heroes, the Crickets, I was a big Buddy Holly fan, so I did a couple of albums with them and a couple of tours of England, and actually met Graham the night before we were about to drive to Nashville. I had no idea how far Nashville was, I didn't realize it was going to take 3 days. Rick Gretsch was the bass player, I said, how long is this going to take? He said, probably about 3 days without stopping. Oh, you're kidding, aren't you? So we met Graham that night before we left, and he was with his big pal, Phil Kaufman. Yeah. And we almost had them convinced to come to Nashville with us, but they declined. And by the time we got back, Graham had passed away, so I just didn't meet him that one time, But, and shortly after that, I guess I ended up in Joe Cocker's band for a couple of years. And I realized that, I'm spending a lot of time here now. This is exactly where I want to be. I'd go and sit in at a local bar in Calabasas, and Don Everly was the lead singer. He just split up with his brother. I'd had long association with them, actually. I met them in '62 in London, so I knew them both. So there I was playing in this bar in L.A. with Don Everly, Buddy Emmons on steel, or Al Perkins on steel. Glenn Campbell used to come and sit in sometimes. Doug Kershaw, Doug Dillard, Byron Berline, John Hartford. I thought, I'm in heaven here. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to England. This is exactly where I should be, because everybody was playing the blues and heavy rock in England, and I wanted to play this kind of music, So I went along to. I'd seen James play a couple of times, seen the hot band play a couple of times, and I'd met James at an Elvis concert. I think that's where we first met. Glendy took us out. The Crickets drove out to Las Vegas. Yeah. James and Glendy got us tickets. So that was the first time I met James. I was in I was really pleased to meet James for the first time. And I went along to a couple of the hot band gigs, you know, and one gig in particular, I went backstage and I said, Albert, wow, we're just thinking about you. You know, what are you doing the next few weeks? I said, well, not very much. I was actually thinking about going back to England, you know. I said, well, James is, it looks like he's going to have to do this tour with Elvis, and, you know, can you do a couple of gigs with us? And I said, well, great, yeah. I'd love to, you know. So I think I was supposed to come along to a couple more gigs or rehearsals or whatever, have a rehearsal at least. And then Glenn D called me like 2 days later. He said, James has got the flu. You're playing tonight. So we had a 2-hour sound check, and I was in the band from there on, you know.
You know, it's amazing. When I was recording with Don and Phil, the Everly Brothers, and they would always tell me about this guitar player in England. So, man, you got to meet this guy. A great guy, a great player. And they would always talk about Albert, but I didn't really know Albert. I don't even know if they mentioned your name to me. They said this guitar player in England, and so I said, well, great. I'm you know, I'd love to meet him. So anyway, that was how that came about, you know. And when Albert came over, I met him. When I met him at the Elvis show. But when we had a real chance to sit down and talk was at the Palomino Club that night when he came out. And that was a real treat to meet this guy. He was a great player. And we just had a lot of great times.
I remember that first night at the Palomino Club because I met my other huge hero, another JB, it was Jimmy Bryant. And right. they were both there that night, and I have a wonderful picture where I'm sitting in between them, and I've got a grin from ear to ear, you know. So this is great. I mean, two guys that I never thought I'd ever get to meet, and here I am with these guys.
You know what was amazing? When I started playing guitar, Leo Fender, the head man of the Fender Guitar Company, we were real good friends. And Jimmy Bryant, he would build guitars, and he would take his guitar out, the prototype, and to Jimmy Bryant in the clubs, and Jimmy would play the guitar, check it out for Leo. And I guess Jimmy he was the first guy to play the telly, and I would be the second.
Really?
Leo Fender. Yeah. As a matter of fact, Albert and I did a memorial after he passed away, and we played together for that. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Now, you're talking about the Telecaster. Throughout the 60s, I wasn't really sure what you played or what Jimmy Bryant played until like late in the 60s. I didn't really see any pictures. And we didn't get the Ozzie and Harriet show in England, you know. Yeah. I didn't see that until the 70s or 80s, you know. But somehow I knew that the telly was the guitar to get. And I found my first one in 63, a second-hand one in 63.
Yeah.
Changed my life playing the telly.
James, I'd kind of be remiss if I didn't ask you a couple more questions about Elvis. I hope you don't mind. You were Elvis's band leader between 69 up until his death in 1977, and you were busy doing a lot of other things. But I take it that you were busy with Elvis. I mean, you were on retainer probably with Elvis and available for all of his Vegas shows and touring activity. And as far as, for example, rehearsals with Elvis go, especially when you started back in '69, it was a really an important time in his life because, as you said before, it was he was coming back. It was a comeback concert, and the spirit around the whole thing must have been very, very creative and important for you too.
Pretty exciting. Anyway, when I met Elvis in '69, when he came out for the rehearsal, he was a little nervous about going back and playing live, but he loved all of his fans, and he wanted to go back and do live shows. And but when we had that first rehearsal, and when I met him, it was like we'd known each other our whole lives. Because I played on Louisiana Hayride the same time he played there, but I never played at the same night because I was working with Bob Luman and we played the same music. And Horace Logan, the MC, was managing Bob, and he wouldn't let us play the same night with Elvis. So I actually didn't meet Elvis until I knew all the band, Scotty Moore and all the guys. But I didn't actually meet him until '69, and when I met him, it's like we'd known each other our whole lives, because our background in music's pretty much the same. But he was great to work with and pretty exciting. He didn't want to rehearse too long that night because we played a couple songs, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's it." So, and of course the drummer, Ronnie Tutt and Jerry Sheff on bass, and it was a hot band, a bunch of good guys.
Well, the double album that was recorded in Vegas in 1970, in Performance, I think it's called, with Elvis Presley.
On stage, yeah.
On stage, yeah. The material that you were doing back then was a lot of the stuff from the Sun era, the Sun Records era.
Yeah, Mystery Train, all those early records. He liked that small group sound, and like he had with Scotty. But Elvis wanted to change when he came back, '69, when he started. He was out for 9 years doing movies, and when he called me, he said, "I don't want to do any more movies. I want to go play live," and that's when we went into Vegas, and. But, all the shows, I played everything from '69 up till he passed away, '77.
So you were with, at one point, maybe the number one rocker in the world, Ricky Nelson, and then, of course, Elvis, the number one rocker in the world. And the scene around them must have been pretty interesting. The protection around them and...
Oh, yeah. Well, Elvis was always in the center, and they had, it was like everybody wanted to get over, climb the fence and see what's going on. But Elvis and Ricky were good friends, and they played football together and baseball. But I never went to the games, and so I didn't meet Elvis, But Ricky and Elvis were good friends.
And you ended up in some of the Elvis films, too, didn't you?
Actually, I did a couple. Yeah, I did... the Vegas, Las Vegas show that Ann Margaret was in, and the Girls, and quite a few. Sometimes you lose track of all the stuff you're doing. So many. You're doing 5 sessions a day.
Yeah.
You get up in the morning, you go do a jingle. An hour jingle, then you go to a Ray Charles session, to a Buck Owens, Merle Haggard, Glenn Campbell. I played on Glenn Campbell's record. As a matter of fact, I met Glenn when he first came out, and I played on his first album on Capitol Records, the Bluegrass, Kentucky. And Ricky wouldn't let me play on a lot of sessions with different artists. So when they would call, I'd say, "Call my friend Glenn. He's a great player." So Glenn got into doing studio work, and then and we played together on a lot of records. And
Len, who is that?
Campbell.
Oh, Glenn. Sorry,
Glenn Campbell, yeah.
Okay.
But he was a great. Glenn had a hard time getting a record deal because he could sing like anybody. He would do a lot of impersonations of different singers, and when he went to cut his own record, he couldn't. Nobody knew who he was. When he started being himself, then all of a sudden, he cut a great record.
You also did you rehearse and record at Graceland as well?
Oh, yeah, I played there. Everything up to '77, all the Graceland stuff. Yeah.
Amazing.
No, he was a great guy. He was very down to earth. He didn't care. He was a real giving person. He would give you the shirt off his back, and he didn't care about anything. If he had a Rolls Royce or whatever cars you liked sitting around, here, the keys, yours. Just You know, it's amazing.
He gave you Cadillacs, didn't he?
No, he found a Cadillac for me up in Denver and had it sent down to California, and so I went and picked it up. But I actually didn't want him to buy it. I bought it because I didn't want, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, I got too many cars. I love cars. Albert and I both love cars. We collect them. I collect them. And it's so fun. He's got a great Ferrari, an older, was it 60? I got into like Thunderbirds, Corvettes, and Cadillac convertibles, and then I never wanted a Mercedes, but now I have 3. And but I'm doing a museum. I can't talk. I'm doing a museum in my hometown, and it's connected with my foundation. And it's going to be cars, guitars, and memorabilia. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to just bring people up to date on a few things. And if you go to Albert's website, you'll see that he is celebrating his 70th birthday with a huge concert in London next April, I think it is.
It's March 1st.
March,
London,
okay.
Yeah. But there will...
I must have an invitation. I'll be there.
Well, there's going to be another smaller celebration in Los Angeles in January of next year too. So
Great.
maybe that'll be easier to get.
I'm in Austria
you are.
the whole month of January, but if I can work it out, I'll fly in and be there for that.
That'd be great.
I love this guy. He's great.
And the website refers to documentary recording and also a DVD and an album, a live album.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, this started out with a friend of mine wanted to do a documentary, and then he said, well, maybe we should celebrate your birthday and maybe do an album and document the making of the album. And it's gotten a bit complicated at the moment because I'm on the road all the time. You know, I'm hardly ever home. So James knows what this is like. You know, it's a wonder we get anything done, isn't it? Forget where we live. But you know, it's going to take shape before long. You know. But I have a book out there too. Someone wrote a biography of me, and so I've got a few things going on too.
And another tour with Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kings coming up this fall.
Yeah, I've been with Bill Wyman now for about 13 years or so, and that's good fun. We only work in Europe. We did fly to the east coast of the U.S. a couple of years ago, but that was like pulling teeth for him because he won't get on a plane and he won't get on a boat, and so it makes touring very difficult, you know. We've been offered tours of Japan and Australia and everywhere, but oh no, I don't want to go there. No, too far. But you know, he's 75, 76 now, and he still wants to play. So we'll keep doing it all the while he does, I guess. Yeah. And I have 2 bands of my own. The band you saw here at the festival, which is relatively new for me. I've been living in the States for well over 35 years, and I've never put my own band together. So I thought it was about time. I've always been a sideman, you know. But I've had a UK band now for like 26, 27 years, and that keeps me busy over there quite a bit. But I'm trying to ease up on that so I can spend more time this side of the water, you know.
And James, I'm just curious. You moved back to Shreveport. What motivated you to do that? Why did you do that?
Well, my wife wanted to go back. Her father got sick, and so we decided to move back to my hometown, and which we did in 1990, and so we're still there. But I'm like Albert. I'm gone all the time and travel a lot, and but I want to mention I have a foundation that we were very blessed with getting music with kids in school, because the government took it out of schools and we were able to get it back in, and thank you. and I furnish guitars to little kids in school, and the teacher, they teach them how to play. A little program, and I have a recording studio in my foundation building, and I'm working at Studio A, and I'm working on Studio B, smaller room. But we invite the kids to come in and play, and they're all excited about doing it, you know. And it's a great program. I mean, I love helping the kids, and that's what we're doing.
And James also tours still with the Taking Care of Business Band, and that's one of the many things that you do.
That's correct. We're also doing the Elvis big screen show, the movie.
Yeah.
We play live to the video, and it's great. We just did a tour last year in Brazil. It was a big sellout, and we're going back in October. Actually, we're doing a cruise before that, and on October 12th, we get off the ship. On the 13th, we fly straight to Brazil from Italy, from Venice, and to start another three-week tour. It's nonstop, and you know. But I want to say it was great being here. I love Canada. I love Canadians, and I played with Ronnie Hawkins on his records. And I don't know if you know a guy named Terry Jacks.
Yeah.
I played on his record, Seasons in the Sun. Yeah. And so I work with a lot of, also Elvis Costello, who lives in Vancouver, and I work with him a lot. And I'm glad to still be working, and I'm like Albert, I'm sure he'll do it till the end of time. Can't stop.
Yeah, what else can we do?
Yeah, well, play with our cars, motorcycles, and boats.
I'm a bad mechanic.
Yeah, I live on a lake, and I've got 4 boats, and I love that. It's very relaxing, and I want to say that a great blessing for my wife, because she takes care of everything while I'm gone, and she runs a foundation, and my son plays guitar, Jeff, and he's played with Albert now a few times, and it's my daughter. They all live in Louisiana, so we're just happy and being blessed. You know, it's a God's blessing. We thank you guys for inviting us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just one final question for each of you. Albert, would you mind just saying something about what James means to you and over the years?
I mean, completely channeled my guitar playing, really. I listened to all of the players in the late 50s, early 60s, and it was James's playing that really shaped my playing, especially when I got my Telecaster, and you know, alongside Jimmy Bryant as well. You know, I got the hot country jazz licks from him, or you know, as best I could. But it was the bends and the light strings and that feel that I got, that I think I've acquired from James. And if it hadn't been for him, my playing would have been totally different.
Thank you.
James, any last words about your friend Albert?
Well, I want to say that when I met Albert, what a great guy, man. He's such a sweet man and a talent. I don't, you know, what can I say about his guitar playing? He's incredible. And if I could play like that, I would. But other than being the most incredible guitar player, he's the most wonderful person I've met.
Well, thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Incredible. Him and his family, beautiful. He has a daughter that sings. You need to tell him about that, Albert. Your daughter. He's got a daughter that sings fantastic.
Yeah, she's an opera singer. She's still studying and working at it, but I'm very proud of her.
A little bit over our head, but she's a great singer. You know, I have a show in Louisiana called the James Burton International Guitar Festival. I'm working on my show for next year, and I'm not going to tell you who's coming, but It's a great show. Albert's been there. Him and his daughter played, and it's a killer show. And we have a lot of great talent. And most of the people I've worked with, and Albert also in the business. And but we'll come back here next year and play some blues.
Love to.
Thank you very much, Albert Lee, James Burton. Thank you for being here.
We also want to thank Doug Cox.
Yes.
Great man, him and Marcy, his wife. Great people. And we want to thank Holger.